Do you struggle with painting? Every time you pick up a brush and you put it on the canvas, it looks like a child drew it with chocolate and fingers? Well, have I got the solution for you? My tutorial, with no AI included, because AI is a horrible stain on this earth, and every time someone uses AI, an angel loses its wings. Well, this tutorial will show you how to turn a simple photo into a painting. Well, something that looks like a painting. It's still a photo, but it's just filters, but yeah. Welcome back to Good Enough Photography. Today I will show you a tutorial of how to turn a photo into a painting with no AI, using only filters in Photoshop. I am a beginner photographer. I have a website at goodenoughphotography.com, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the video. It really helps me out, and I need more help. Well, let's get into the tutorial before I keep digging my grave with this incredibly horrible intro. So, first thing, I like to duplicate the layer. This isn't needed, but it just makes me happy inside. Then we want to convert it to a smart filter, mask, object, smart object. Because basically, so if you don't convert it to a smart object, the filters won't layer how you want. And if you use like the filter gallery, it'll just choose the last filter you used instead of actually like letting you pick. I don't know, it's kind of weird. So just make sure you have it, chosen. So this tutorial is filter based, and one thing, disclaimer before we start, is that these aren't going to be like perfect numbers. You're going to have to test out the numbers for your own photo, because I try always to make copy and paste tutorials where you have exact values and exact things, but it just doesn't look good for some photos. So you just got to be careful. So we're going to start with poster edge, because we don't want the edge, but we want the posterization part. I played around with a lot of things. Underpaint, if you don't want to use poster edge, underpainting works pretty well, but I would say poster edge is better. Just depends on what you want. But, so, I would try to make sure that, so basically posterization makes it flat or less flat. This one, if you have it at 0, boom, look at it, super flat. If you have it at 6, it looks basically normal, and we don't want that. So I like to keep it around a 2 range for more detailed photos, maybe a 3. I probably wouldn't use 3, but you could. 1 for more, like, less detailed photos, because we could use 1 for this one, but as you're looking at everything, it kind of looks a little funky. So I'm just going to stick with 2, because it gives us more colors and less of that, like, awkward black space. So, yeah. And since it is a smart filter, though, you can always go back and edit things, which is my favorite part about the smart filter. So now we go to our funky filter gallery. So, one thing I forgot to mention is that there's 4 types of, well, no, not 4, there's 6 types of filters in the filter gallery. We got artistic, brushstrokes, distort, sketch, stylize, and texture. Texture texturizes your photo. Stylize only does this. I don't know, that's the only thing in stylize. Sketch makes it look like a sketch. And some of them don't show up with photo, like you gotta like play around with it. That's why they're not showing up right now, but I'm just showing you so you know, I'm not gonna play around with it. Distort distorts the photo. Brushstrokes makes it look brushed, and artistic adds like artistic flair. Here's cutout. I used it for my last tutorial. If you want to check that out, it was how to make a photo look like a comic book. It's pretty good. There's also a bunch of others on here, but we did poster edge just now, which gave us our little thing, but we want paint dabs. I don't know. It's spelled weird. I don't know. I think it's dabs, but if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. So basically, brush size, when you increase it, makes it blurrier because the brush is larger. And then, yeah. Another thing you could do is like sharpness, play around sharpness, try to fix it and stuff, make it look how you want. But this is not what we want at all. So I like to keep brush size pretty low, probably around, because it goes up to 50. So I keep it pretty low on the scale of things. You also want to play around with sharpness, because, so you don't want it too sharp or else it starts looking like that, but you don't want it unsharp because then it starts looking blurry. So I try to keep it around the value that I'm choosing for my paint dabs, whatever. So I think, and since this is a smart filter, we can always go back and edit it. One thing I must mention is over here, you can see that the colors are kind of meshing. It does look fine later, but if you don't want that, just try not to use photos that have too much of the same color in it. It's just gonna happen when you play around with like the simplicity of a photo. Colors start merging. which is gonna happen with whatever filters you use, so yeah. Next, we want to dry brush. So we open it up, we go to dry brushing, and there are, yet again, brush size, which controls how large the brush is. As you can see, smaller, more detail, larger, less detail. Yay! Brush detail also is a thing. So like you can have a lot of brush detail in like a really big brush. You get the gist. Texture just textures the photo. We don't want it too high because then it starts looking like that. So try not to do that. So we are gonna have a relatively, let's see, yeah, like a middle brush size. Like I'd say around a 5. And then you do want a high detail because we don't want to lose a lot of this is losing detail, which is good because we don't want it to look like a photo. But also we don't want to lose too much detail because then it just looks like a hot mess and we don't want that. You can play around with texture. It only goes up to 3, so like I usually stick around 1 or 2. I don't really go up to 3. It's just a lot in 3. I think 1's pretty good, but yet again, you can do whatever you want. It also depends on your photo. Just play around until it looks good for your photo. And I know it looks weird right now, but you just kind of have to trust the process. So next we're going into oil paint, which is not in the filter gallery. It's actually in stylize, and it's right here. Now oil paint is a more complex filter, you could say. So basically, first of all, you can move around your little cursor to choose an area you want to focus on, like look at in the preview corner. So these filters rely on each other. If you have higher stylization and then you move cleanliness, it looks different than if you had low stylization and move cleanliness. Same thing with like size and stuff. It's just the filters move based on each other sort of thing. So you're not gonna get like the same thing every time, so it's a little more funky to play with, but eh. So well, you can do whatever, but I think it looks best with a smaller, like, with like bigger chunks, not chunks, paint strokes. Cause like you see how these get all like, wee, like a swirly, kind of like a Van Gogh-y, but not exactly. Almost looks a little AI, but it's not because there's no AI in here. I mean, yes, Photoshop does have AI features. I don't really use that. If this uses some sort of like basic AI, I don't know if that technically counts. I don't know. I haven't done like insane research into this, but I'm not using like ChatGPT or something, so it's different. So you just kind of like move around. Personally, I think that the bigger splotches, choppiness, splotchiness, I don't know, looks better for this type of photo. And yet again, since it is a smart filter, we can always go back. So I think I'm gonna go here for now. We can always change it, but I think that looks pretty good right now. It looks a little funky, but overall it looks good. So now we want to go into filters again. Okay, we got plastic wrap, which wraps it in plastic. It kind of takes like the valleys and the hills and the valleys and like adds shine like it was 3D and wrapped in plastic, which is what we want to make it look like paint, because a lot of acrylic, that's why I'm saying this is more of like an acrylic painty type thing, because acrylic paint you can like, I mean, you can do it with oil paint too, but it's seen more in acrylic paint because it's just like faster to dry, and a lot of acrylic paints like are so thick that like, you know, you've seen it. It's like giant mountains of acrylic paint that like hold their shape. Like you can almost like sculpt it with like a palette knife or something. But that's why I can't decide if this is acrylic. But first, so plastic wrap. Highlight strength controls how strong the highlights are. The higher, the more highlights. The lower, the more matte it looks. So we want some highlight, but not too much highlight. But we play around with highlights after you do the other ones because it's really, it's easier to like fiddle. So detail. More detail is, well, more detail. It kind of like wraps more, so that's why it looks really like bright all of a sudden, because it's like wrapping everything in the theoretical plastic. Little detail wraps less in the theoretical plastic. I don't know why I'm calling it theoretical, but you know what I mean. Smoothness just controls how smooth it is. Like you see how this is like really smooth, and then you like go down smoothness and it gets more bumpy. So we don't want the smoothness too high, but we also don't want it too low because we want it to look kind of painty. So just play around with it. This one is a little different when you're playing around with it. Also, I tend to scroll around my photo. Like, places like here look a little weird. So I might play with highlight, but you don't want the highlight too low because you do want some sort of shine to it, because paint, like especially acrylic paint, since it's a plastic based paint, dries shinier. So you kind of want to just play around a little bit. Other things I'm looking for here is we don't want the colors to get too blended into themselves. So if we see how like, we have like a black here and a black here, but they're slightly different blacks, we don't want it to be like flat. We also don't want this to be too, not insanity, but like insane. I don't know. We do want the highlight a little higher than you think it should be, because the next filter we're gonna put on this is gonna matte it a little bit. So just play around, and if you go to high detail, you can see it gets really funky. So try to stick with the lower details if you can. Smoothness, as you can see, smooths it over and stuff. After fiddling, I think this is good, but yet again, since it is a smart filter, you can always go back. Okay, so our next and last filter is Texturizer, which makes it look like it's on a canvas. There's a bunch of textures in here. There's like that one, patchwork, stained glass, grain, mosaic tiles. I might play around with patchwork at another time because it gives it like a pixel art vibe. Also like mosaic. So if anyone I know this one's called mosaic, but like this gives it like a, you know what I mean. So if anyone wants to see me try to figure out how to use this and make it look pretty, I will. So we just want Texturizer right now though. So we gotta play around with this a little bit. So the highest scaling makes it look extra textured, but we don't want it too textured. I mean, unless you do, but I don't like it like that. So relief kind of is like that. It's just like how strong it is. You don't want it too strong or else it starts looking weird. So we just gotta play around with it. Don't forget to scroll around your photo. This is basically what it's going to look like as the final product, but yet again, since these are smart filters, we can always go back and forth, and you can just like play with the filters until you get the result you want. But this is looking pretty good so far, I would say. Like, out of a lot of the attempts I did like 20 attempts, I'm going to be totally honest with you. But out of like the 20 attempts I did, I'd say this is the best. So as you can see, there is some melding here, but it's not too bad, and you can still tell the difference between the bee's body and the, what were those? Flowers. Yeah, I think they're flowers. I don't know. This flower lost a lot of detail, but in my defense, it didn't have detail to begin with. It was pretty out of focus. The bee still looks like a bee. The wings still look like wings. The antennae is struggling a little bit, but overall it looks really good. So as you can see here, we have our finished photo. Now, one thing about Photoshop is for some reason when you use the filter gallery, it doesn't this doesn't say posterization, it just says filter gallery. So you kind of have to remember the order the steps you did in, or you could just keep clicking things. One thing for oil paint we might want to do, and it just really depends. I don't think we have to, but we may. I like to play around with the opacity a little bit of the oil paint. You can see here, like, 0% opacity makes this photo look really funky, but yeah, I think I want it a little duller. See? And then it changes again, because like, so when you're editing these smart filters though, one thing that does happen is you can't see the layers like above or below it. It just shows that layer itself. So it is a little trial and error, but yet again, it's not too bad. So I'm gonna check posterization. Maybe, let's see what it would look like with a 3. Takes a little bit to load. There you go. That's what it would look like with a 3. Do I like it better? No, I think I like the 2 better. Actually, let's see again. Can't remember now. My object permanence is not great. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I think let's go with the 3. And then if we find our plastic wrap, we can take that if it loads ever. Sorry. Photoshop is kind of slow loading sometimes, which is annoying when I'm trying to do these tutorials because, like, then I have to be like, oh, well, and then pause. So it's kind of dumb, but it's fine. Let's see how that looks. Okay. I'd actually say it looks better. Now, it does look a little, not foggy, but funky. I don't know. I say funky a lot. So let's go back to this. Let's turn relief down a tiny bit. I said, there you go. And actually, let's turn scaling up a tiny bit as well. Yeah, that looks better. See, as you can see that even I, after making this tutorial and doing like every test under the planet, still am finding different ways to make it better. But that's why you can't just choose numbers, because even though I've had these numbers written down and I've been using the same photo, it still looks different depending on things you change. Say, like, I always have paint daubs at 4 and 5, right? Let's just say that. And I change oil paint. Well, maybe paint daubs 4 and 5 look bad with that specific oil paint setting. So you just have to trial and error it out. But one thing that is good about this tutorial is it tells you order, because the different order of the layers also of the filters also affects how it looks. So you gotta keep order in mind. Tend to put the so we want texturize to be one of the strongest points, and we want texturize and plastic wrap to be two of the strongest things in here. So that's why plastic wrap and oil paint are at the top. We wanted to smooth it out. So if you want to like smooth out or simplify a photo, you should probably do that first rather than later. You got to keep order in mind when you're experimenting with filters yourself. One thing I also like to do is check the difference. And as you can see, there is a difference. So we did do stuff. Because like when you're looking at it for a while, your brain starts to think, oh, maybe I didn't do that much. Or you're thinking, oh, it doesn't look that good. So you kind of just got to take a mental brain break and you got to switch it back and forth. And yeah, I'd say this looks pretty painting-like. It's a little funky in some places, but yet again, that could just be because this photo right here had a lot of out of focus bits here, so it kind of blended. But overall, it looks really nice. And we can always, like, yet again, just go around and press the filters. So we did poster edges, we did paint daubs. We could check out dry brush, not dry paint. Because, like, we did change posterization a tiny bit. So maybe we do want to change dry paint. Dry brush. Why do I keep calling it dry paint? Let's see. Barely changed it, but let's see what that does. See, it does change it a tiny bit, even the small changes. But yeah, so this is a pretty good photo, I would say. If you liked this video, I have 2 other tutorials on my page. I'm probably going to make more tutorials next week. I post every Monday at hopefully around 4. I'm not the best at keeping that up, but hopefully around 4. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can check out my other videos. Check out my website. I got TikTok and an Instagram, both at Good Enough Photography. It's not good enough, it's good enough, because I thought that was funny. Well, thank you for watching and have a great day.